1956 Volkswagen Beetle, otherwise known as der Käfer auf Deutsch. You guys know the whole story of the Volkswagen, or the people's car, so we don't really need to cover that. What we do need to cover is why this one is special. There are a couple reasons. Number one, it is a very unique color. Number two, it is perfectly restored. This particular one, I believe, set a record price at Barrett-Jackson when it was sold in Scottsdale a couple of years ago. But really, the reason why we wanted to point this one out to you is because it is fully optioned. And when I mean fully optioned, options you didn't think existed in a Volkswagen Käfer. Let's come on back here and check out what motivates this 56 Beetle. It is the stock 1192cc flat 4-cylinder engine that puts out a fire-breathing 36 horsepower. I think back in college I had an RX-7 where I added 36 horsepower, but I digress. The point here is not to show you the stock engine, it's really to show you the detailing that went into this restoration, and you can really see it in the engine here. The car wasn't restored by a shop. The owner didn't send the car and a blank check and got the car back a year later. He took it apart himself. He put it back together himself. Yeah, there's some stuff he couldn't do like the paint, but overall this was a labor of love. And then he picked a theme while he was doing it, and the theme we talked about is the accessories. And you can see it back here. It has the reverse lights and the fishtail exhaust tips. So then there's the obvious question of how does this car drive? It's a 1956 model year car, but I'm kind of shocked I'm saying this. It drives almost like a modern car. An incredibly slow modern car. Like, let's downshift here into second to go around this corner here. And we get a little power through this corner. Not that this thing is a fire-breathing monster. It has like 2 horsepower. But it has an interesting experience to it. Like, here, if I'm going to go from second gear and then I go to third gear, you would think by going to a higher gear you accelerate. This car does not accelerate. I don't care how high of a gear you get, it just stays one pace. 50 miles an hour is terminal velocity. So if you are a Volkswagen aficionado, you would look at the interior of this Käfer and realize there is something very different about it. And that's because the accessory theme of this restoration really picks up steam on the inside of the car. But what exactly are the differences? Well, there is a fuel gauge, there is a speedometer with a trip odometer, the glove box door has a handle on it, the passenger has a grab handle with a light, there's a Motorola radio, there's a parcel shelf that is made out of bamboo, there is a lock on the shifter, but my favorite accessory is the steering wheel. Now, to me, it looks like something that was lifted out of a 190 SL, which is not special for this vintage of Volkswagen, because most of them actually had the banjo steering wheel here. This one has this horn that has a trim ring, and the center cap is the icon of St. Christopher. Now, riddle me this. What does this car have in common with most GM Motorama cars, basically every concept car that Harley Earl designed and built during his tenure at General Motors? Well, those cars also had the icon of St. Christopher somewhere on the interior. So like the Buick Y-Job, the GM LeSabre, or the Cadillac Cyclone all had this same icon. So that brings up a very unique question. Why St. Christopher? Well, old St. Chris, he's the icon saint of safe travel. Once you put aside the fact that this Käfer simply cannot get out of its own way, the thing that I find most interesting about driving one of these that are well sorted, you actually see how advanced the engineering was for back in the day. I mean, this thing, the original concept, late 30s, early 40s, this one's a 56, and it was in production, to the almost this century. And another interesting thing about this car, this thing was produced literally around the world. These things were not just produced in America, they weren't just produced in Germany, they were produced in like when there wasn't Yugoslavia. You know, these things were used as police cars in Iran. That's how diverse these things were. But I digress. Anyway, you really see how advanced the engineering is when you drive one of these things and you go around a corner, or the fact that it is unbelievably balanced for a 56 model year car. Granted, there really wasn't a contemporary of it. There was the Duchevay, not obviously for us Americans, but the Duchevay doesn't have the balance. You know, Duchevay is basically a wicker seat with 4 wheels, where this is a proper piece of engineering kit that you can take out and drive. Granted, you're not going to drive it very fast, but you are going to feel safe on an interstate with big cars around you, and you're going to feel as if, you know what, the thing goes down the road pretty well, where you can't say that about other small cars of the era. The detailing continues up front here. Now this car, it lives in the state of Texas, so that's probably why it has the 3 American flags on it. I don't know exactly why, but it is a Volkswagen, so it has the Wolfsburg coat of arms. A little history on this. So this is the castle of Wolfsburg, and this is the River Aller, which borders the city of Wolfsburg. So if you are a Volkswagen aficionado, you know that is where Volkswagen is based. It is in the state of Lower Saxony, and just last year, it was voted is it voted or is it found to be the wealthiest city in all of Germany, mainly because of a healthy auto industry. But I digress. The detailing continues underneath the frunk, and basically what you got here, so if you're a Ferrari collector, it's all about the toolkit. Well, here with a Volkswagen, you could have accessorized your Beetle and got your very own toolkit. Now, this is cool and all, but I think this is one of the details that has led this car to win first place in pretty much every show it has entered since it was restored back in 2002. This one is known as the Zwitter model, or the between model. Basically, from the early 50s to the mid 50s, there was a running change of the window in the back. They went from a dual split window to a single oval. So by the time this car came out, it was always a single oval in the back, at least for the hardtops. So a couple more things. My favorite accessory, curve feelers. Then there's this color, it's called almond green. You really don't see Beetles in this color. It's a 2-stage paint process, and it has 3 layers of clear coat on a Beetle. Now I have a question for you. What does this car have in common with that car? Peter Brock, the man that designed the Corvette Stingray concept car that led to the design of the C2, he was drafted by Harley Earl to work on a direct competitor to this car. Now, I know the classic car world says the Corvair is the direct competitor to this car. I would argue the execution was totally different. The only thing that was common with these cars was they were both rear engine. Basically, the story goes like this. Harley took Peter, and Peter at that time was, 19, and a couple of other young designers, threw them into a secret design studio in the basement of GM Design in Warren, Michigan. I mean, this place was so secret that the CEO of General Motors, even he couldn't go down there. Security would have escorted him out. And he said, I want you guys to work on a car that you would buy, a small, affordable car. So Peter came up with a couple of different concepts. He came up with a 2-door, he came up with a cool panel delivery van, that was neat. And they worked on it a couple of months, and then Harley took the designs and presented them at a design review to the board of directors at the GM Design Dome. So there was this small car, then a couple of other cars, and they took the silk off, and the CEO of General Motors gets up, puts the silk back on, and he says, GM does not build small cars. There is no power in this thing. You know what, I'd normally be worried about no seat belts, but I don't think you can go fast enough to hurt yourself.